renewal. Constitutional changes of government are increasingly seen by some as a response to deep governance failures and eroded trust in democracy.
South Africa's International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola says that the country will continue to support peace efforts on the continent. He says all stakeholders, including civil society organizations, must also be given an opportunity to contribute to peace processes. Lamola was speaking on the margins of the African Peace and Security Dialogue hosted by the Thabo Mbeki Foundation in Magaliesburg in Gauteng province. He says conflict and the unconstitutional change of government on the continent are rather a concern.
AU, the East Africa and SADC have always been seized with the matter, and we have resolved that there must be engagement with the state and non-state actors, which is a process that is being led by the initiative where President Obasanjo and other 5 facilitators are seized with the matter. So that process is very important for sustainability of the peace process.
On to this now. Nigeria's 31 million people face food shortages more than any other country in Africa due to a collapse in aid funding from the US and other Western countries. The UN World Food Programme has closed 150 nutrition centers in the northeast during the lean season between harvests, causing hundreds of thousands of children to stop receiving essential treatment and the number of children needing hospitalization to skyrocket. The US government has pledged $32.5 million to the WFP to provide food assistance and nutrition support to internally displaced people in conflict-affected areas. On to this now. Top jurists attending the inaugural J20 summit in South Africa have heard that judicial independence is in the public interest because it allows judicial officers to perform their functions without a fear of favour. These inputs formed part of the gathering's first discussion on advancing judicial independence and accountability under the overall theme of justice in a time of change, independence, innovation and cooperation. Justice Leon Theron of South Africa's Constitutional Court emphasised how independence is critical to the role of law and accountability.
Judicial independence is not in the personal interests of the judiciary, but in the public interest, because it allows us as judicial officers to perform our duties without fear or favour. Judicial independence is fundamental to democracy. Judicial independence is critical to upholding the rule of law and the separation of powers, foundations that enable our democracies to thrive while ensuring accountability.
The Israeli government has dismissed a fresh offer by Hamas to free the remaining hostages and end the war in Gaza as a spin with another new in it. The offer came after US President Donald Trump urged the group to give up the 20 hostages still thought to be alive. The BBC's Liza Doucet has the details.
There is huge fury among the Egyptian and Qatari mediators who basically say that the so-called Witkoff plan, which is named after President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, Israel had agreed to the plan. It was essentially Israel's plan. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, after for many months saying he only wanted a partial deal, is now saying he doesn't want a partial deal. And the mediators say that Israel has not engaged with this proposal for many weeks. So it looks like Israel is just biding its time.
A recap of your top story. The Thabo Mbeki Foundation hosts the Africa Peace and Security Dialogue to discuss instability, urging governments to stop wars. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi rejected the invitation, citing bias. However, Chairperson Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi urges change. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapala Mahape.
SABC News, the African perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, we'll outline the economic benefits of Kenya hosting the recently concluded CHAN tournament, while West Ham midfielder Lucas Paqueta is now considering suing the Football Association after he was cleared of spot fixing. Details at 4:30.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 8 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Coming up on Africa in Business this afternoon, our usual Thursday edition of the G20. We'll be focusing this afternoon on the colloquium that has been taking place, finding out what non-state actors are expecting from the various arms of the G20 as we get closer and closer to that summit date. That and a whole lot more coming up for you this afternoon. But we begin here at the Angola Oil and Gas 2025 conference in Luanda. A new agreement has been signed between Angola's National Oil, Gas and Biofuels Agency, the state oil company, and energy giants Shell and Chevron for Block 3324. In this report, Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa speaks to entrepreneurs about how their companies are positioning themselves to seize opportunities across the oil and gas value chain, thus extending beyond the traditional exploration and production.
Representatives from Angola's leading oil and gas companies, along with industry leaders and policymakers, have gathered at the Angola Oil and Gas Conference to explore investments, projects, and the future of the sector. I spoke with Richard Mellon, Vice President of ALGOA, and began by asking him what innovative solutions his company is developing to remain relevant and competitive in a low-carbon future.
We look at a one integrated solution as a fact of being able to deliver the client a one-stop shop to get things done. Oftentimes someone will come in and they have a particular solution, but that to implement that solution requires a lot of other things outside and around it. So the way we operate is that a client can come in with a napkin, with a drawing just made with a pen or a piece of paper. We can take that napkin, we send it to our drafting department and make nice drawings out of it. Then we can take that over to our production department where we can machine things, or we can weld things, we can fabricate to the specifications to international standards, which is very critical in the oil and gas sector.
Meanwhile, Lotson Pinnock from Seadrill spoke about the partnerships and investments he's pursuing at the expo to help scale operations and expand into new markets.
We are more focused with dealing with producers, companies like Azuli Energy, which we actually do have a contract with now. We have a contract with Sonangol as well, and with Total Energies. Any oil producers that would like to do deep water drilling, that's who we go for. Given that we can come into contact with as many companies as possible, what we do is present what we have. The idea is to give a clearer picture of what we do, how we do it, and who we're doing it with. Sonadrill specifically is a joint venture between Seadrill and Angola since 2019. We specialize in deep water drilling with 3 active rigs right now.
During a panel discussion, participants stressed that access to financing remains a significant challenge. The Vice President of Investment at the Africa Finance Corporation, Ibitola Ukabam, outlined some solutions to address this concern.
I'll describe how to create efficient financing through creating bankable projects. So that is to go back to the point where a project is being envisaged and developed. We need to ensure that every aspect of the project is developed with the financing solution or the financing requirements in mind. We need to ensure that every pillar of the project is developed in a manner that is world-class, that is best practice, and then bring the project into a space where it is attractive to a good wide variety of financing parties. Now, whenever we talk about bankability, it becomes a question about what really is bankability, and that can vary per project. But there are bankability features in every aspect of a project. So financially, for instance, a project should be able to sustain itself financially.
The discussions at this year's Angola Oil and Gas Conference highlight both the challenges and opportunities facing the sector, as industry leaders seek innovative solutions, strategic partnerships, and sustainable financing to drive Angola's energy future. We can only hope that this will not be another talk shop. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa at the 2025 Angola Oil and Gas Conference in Luanda, Angola.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation, Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Do continue to engage with us on our various social media platforms. On X, Instagram and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. If there are any stories that you'd like to share that you believe would be of interest to our listeners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora, do send us your emails to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 14 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. In just a moment, we'll be getting into our weekly G20 feature. We bring that to you in conjunction with SAFM, as well as the G20, looking at all the various aspects. We've focused on women, we've focused on youth, as well as the different Sherpas, and really what the insight and the input has been from the various stakeholders leading up to the G20. This afternoon, we'll be focusing on what various non-state actors, various non-state stakeholders have to achieve and what their expectations are regarding the G20, which is this year being held in South Africa. Also, at about 4:30, we'll look at the latest market indicators with Matapelo Mahape, and also bringing you the latest as far as the business of sport is concerned. Well, it is South Africa's Parliament Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation and the Southern African Liaison Office, SALO, earlier this week hosted a colloquium on the people's expectations for South Africa's G20 presidency. This is a conversation with non-state actors. Through this colloquium, the committee and SALO seek to establish stakeholder expectations regarding South Africa's G20 presidency with various engagement groups. And we've actually spoken to a number of them here on Channel Africa as well as on SFM. And these are namely the Y20, the C20, W20, T20, and the B20, amongst others.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa and SAFM, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
So the South African Parliament Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Corporations and the South African Liaison Office, SALO, earlier this week hosted a colloquium on the people's expectations for South Africa's G20 presidency. And this is a conversation with non-state actors. What we've been doing and what we've been hearing a lot is from government. We've been hearing from a lot of official bodies. But what do various citizens have to say? What do NGOs, for example, and civil society groups and their expectations of the G20? All of this will be focused on this afternoon as we host our weekly G20 feature with myself, Tami Ngubeni, here on Africa in Business and the National Pulse on SAFM with Ashraf Garda. So that's our focus for today. What are the people on the ground saying? What are their expectations? Are they even aware of the G20 presidency and the key issues that are being discussed? We'll be looking at this afternoon. It's titled A Conversation with Non-State Actors. And through this colloquium, the committee, as well as SALO, seek to establish stakeholder expectations regarding South Africa's G20 presidency with various engagement groups. Let me repeat those once again for your benefit if you've just joined us. It's the Y20, the C20, the W20, the T20, as well as the B20, amongst others.
In fact, there was a M20 yesterday or 2 days ago that we attended because we broadcasted from there. I'm not sure how many 20s there are into the all-important G20, right? But I mean, the point is well taken. So building on that discussion of the various G20 engagement groups that has been highlighted, right? One of the key issues has been the issues of implementation that goes beyond the G20 meetings in November. I think it's a big issue. So what happens after that? And there are many people who are particularly concerned about the overall relevance to the people in the street. That means, how does it impact all of them? So to discuss it even further, we now joined on the line by the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation. That's Supra Mahuma Pella. With me, Tami, you can take over.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Mamopela. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business as well as SAFM as we continue focusing on the G20. But this is a very important aspect, finding out what the non-state stakeholders are expecting from the upcoming G20. But in what ways is your committee actively working to champion the voices of all the stakeholders that you've engaged? And also, while you're doing that, making sure that their perspectives and their voices are also heard and that they do actually shape the G20 deliberations. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Tami, and good afternoon to you also, Ashraf, and those who are listening and watching. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
So let's find out, Mr. Mambu.
In fact, I can jump in now, Tommy. Certainly, we can do that. So let's get to this issue. In terms of, so we know there's been an issue from the outside of people not too sure exactly where it goes, right? But perhaps you may want to pick up, Tommy, on that issue of just the stakeholder engagements and what happens. So I'll leave it to you, in fact, do that.
No, certainly. I mean, it's such a key thing, ensuring that all the voices are represented. And Mr. Mamabila, I'm wondering how you, as the committee, are going to ensure that you are actively championing the voices of all the stakeholders involved, that from the highest office to the officeless, those voices are heard and that their perspective also shape the deliberations surrounding the G20. What is it that your committee is doing in that regard?
Once more, thank you very much, Sister Tami. Firstly, the Portfolio Committee is not a non-state actor. We are a creature established in terms of the Constitution of the Republic, and we exist basically in the context of the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa to do three things. One, to do oversight on the executive. Two, to make laws. And three, to make sure that we represent the people. So that's the framework within which all committees of Parliament operate. So we came together as the Portfolio Committee and we deemed it necessary because we do oversight on the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to bring them together. But in this case, we brought in a non-state actor who was working with us, SALO, to make sure that we look at other non-state actors, the extent to which they are playing a role in this matter of the G20, which is going to happen here in South Africa in November. So we met with the T20, which is the think tanks, the C20, the B20, the L20, W20 for women, and the Y20. In summary, our observation is that the Republic of South Africa, under the presidency of Ntate Ramaphosa, but also representing the African continent, because the African Union is working together with South Africa to make sure that South Africa is just a venue which is hosting the G20, it becomes successful. So we are happy, one, that logistically, content-wise, research, everything else so far is going well. Secondly, we are happy that from the side of Parliament, led by the Speaker, Togo Didiza, at the end of this month, they are going to be having their own P20, which is parliamentarians coming together to then look at, from an oversight perspective, what is it that parliaments are expecting because they represent the people. Critically, what was emphasized yesterday is the fact that other G20s have been sitting, but there hasn't been institutionalized, systematic, sustainable mechanisms put in place to make sure that decisions that are made at this G20 summits are indeed followed on after the G20 summit. In this regard, we've agreed with the non-state actors yesterday that using avenues like our parliament, we will make sure that every 6 months after the G20, we will demand that government table a report in parliament, and the report must also be given to the people of South Africa so that they can express their own views. Secondly, those 6 months report must be tabled with the African Union so that the African Union can make sure that member states within the African continent do attend to the agreements that are emerging from the G20. Thirdly, Pan-Africanist Parliament, we've agreed that in their sittings, no sitting must sit without looking at the way forward in as far as progress coming out of the G20 is concerned. But we also agreed with the proposal made by the Y20 young people that these structures, some of them are going to cease to exist after November. The young people are suggesting that no, these structures must not cease to exist like the Y20. There must be a G20 Youth Council, which will exist globally to look at matters that are affecting young people in South Africa, in Africa, and all over the world. So we hope that those structures can live beyond the G20 as a new phenomenon and a new approach going forward.
Okay. Now, one of the things, Super, and I want to pick your brain on this one, is you judge the conversations that take place in WhatsApp groups. What are the biggest issues that they're concerned about every single day? I mean, the issues of crime, as we know, is one, and no jobs. I'll tell you what, nobody in 3 family groups that I'm involved in have even mentioned the G20 once in the last 5 months. Now, if we then extend that to other conversations from other families, it does suggest a very, very urgent need to bring in civil society into the conversation so that they fully understand the impact of G20 and how it will help them, and therefore they will embrace it fuller. What's your plan to do just that?
Remember, we don't implement G20. We do oversight on the executive that is responsible for the G20. You are right, and the people who are talking on the social media are right. That is not everybody. The majority of the people don't know and don't have an association with the proceedings, the contents, and expected outcome of the G20. So yesterday, one of the emphasis that was made was that these structures, which are said to be representing the people like the C20, the B20, and so on, must make sure that from next week, they intensify more than ever before communication with the people on the ground across the African continent. But we also hope that member states of the African Union, parliamentarians who are part of the Pan-African Parliament, and all the NGOs and community-based organizations can make sure that they raise awareness and sensitize our people about this important platform, but also to educate them that G20 is a product of a crisis financially which was facing the world in 1997, 1998, and the ministers of finance came together to come up with a solution. And in the course of that, that's how then this creature called the G20 came into existence. And 10 years later, the same crisis arose. And that's why then the heads of states came into the picture. And that's where we find ourselves now. If we don't educate our people about its history, its content, its purpose, and how people must actually direct the agenda of the G20, and how G20 must arrive at decisions which are sensitive to the views of the people of the ground, it will become irrelevant. And that point was acknowledged yesterday, that there will never be enough communication. It has to be intensified.
You spoke earlier on about the proposals that are coming out, specifically from the youth, to ensure that this is not just something that happens when the G20 takes place, but it actually continues on a global scale throughout the course of the year. And that really speaks to issues of sustainability. And what are the mechanisms that are in place to ensure that whatever outcomes come out of this G20 summit, that they don't just remain rhetoric, that it's not just another talk shop, but that these outcomes translate into tangible benefits for ordinary South Africans, developments that they can see, feel, and experience in their day-to-day lives, specifically around economic empowerment and sustainable development as well.
On our part, as the Portfolio Committee, on Wednesday next week from 9 o'clock, until late in the afternoon, we are sitting with Minister Lamola, who is the Minister of DERCO. And one of the things we are going to emphasize, one is that there has to be everyday communication across the board. What it means is that on a daily basis, some message must go out, not only to tell people about the papers that have been developed, so that the people can also feedback on what are their expectations. That's the first thing. The second thing that we are going to be communicating to the minister is a decision that has been taken yesterday, that post the G20, we would want them to report on a 6-monthly basis through Parliament to the people on how they are implementing the outcomes of the G20. Remember, the outcomes of the G20 are not detached from other outcomes that, like the Millennium Development Goals, like Agenda 2063 in the African continent, like the tools on how we implement. For instance, yesterday we said G20 must say how they are going to help Africa to implement the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, so that they can bring the resources, they can bring the knowledge, they can bring the capacity to work together with this developing economy in the African continent to implement our own perspective enshrined in the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. We are also saying issues of the environment has to be at the center of this industrialization through the agenda of the G20, because if you don't preserve the environment, there's going to be degradation, like all these calamities that are going all over the world. And what we are trying to develop through industrialization will then be destroyed because you did not preserve the environment.
Okay. Here's the last question just before we conclude then, right? So, and we touched on it to a degree, but what mechanisms would you use or are in place, right, to ensure that post the G20 summit, the outcomes translate into something very tangible, very practical that we can feel?
The African Union has to make sure that every member state reports on a regular basis to the African Union on the extent to which they are implementing the outcome. Secondly, every parliament throughout the African continent, through the Pan-African Parliament, has to make sure that they report on a regular basis, quarterly, on the implementation and as far as oversight is concerned. Thirdly, business throughout the African continent, business, doing trade all over the world, has to, on a regular basis, report to the substructures of the G20 through member states to say what progress are they making. Young people, like I said, are right. Some of the structures has to exist beyond G20. Those structures must sit down on a regular basis to discuss what progress we are making and use television, social media, newspapers, radio, interaction practical with people to make sure that we report on progress that we are making. But most importantly, it's important for G20 member states to say, we need to provide a platform for people to hold the state presidents who head the G20 states is concerned. And we hope that the Pan-African Parliament, working with the rest of the world, parliaments can work together and say, because we have got an instrument legally to hold executives accountable, how do we make sure that we become the voice of people through our parliaments, through committees, through members of parliament, so that the people can, on an ongoing basis, indeed hold the executive accountable by using their own parliament.
And we're going to have to leave it at that for this afternoon, but thank you very much for that update on the conversations that have been ongoing, making sure that everybody's voice is represented. That was the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee for International Relations and Corporations, Supra Mahomapelo. We thank you very much. It's exactly 4:34 Central African Time. Thank you to the chair of the Portfolio Committee and to Ashraf Garda on SAFM. It's gone exactly 4:34 as we head over now to the markets desk, where Matapelo Mahape is standing by with your latest market indicators.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Tame. Good afternoon. I am Chanduko Ligege with your market indicators. $1 is trading at 17 rand 67 in South Africa, Botswana 13 pula 32, Namibia 17 Namibian dollars 67, Zambia 23 kwacha 73. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 49, Ethiopia 142 big 53, Uganda 3,000 shilling 514, Tanzania 2,000 shilling 483. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 534 in Egypt, 48 Egyptian pound 52 Tunisia, 2 dinar 90, Algeria 129 dinar 17, Morocco the dollar will cost you 90 rand 3 cents. Angola the dollar is at 911 kwanza. Congolese franc is at 2,843. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,551, platinum at $1,426 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $68.14 a barrel. That is all from me. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Mosibu Dimakura with the latest sports news at the SAWA. So South Africa's Department of Sports, Arts and Culture have announced a significant progress in the procurement as well as the implementation of video assistant referee system for South African football in close collaboration with the South African Football Association as well as the Premier Soccer League. This initiative aims to enhance the integrity, the fairness as well as the overall quality of domestic competitions by addressing the ongoing concerns over refereeing decisions that have led to a fan dissatisfaction and which stand to impact South Africa's future standing among football nations if VAR is not adopted. Now, $4.6 million has been set aside for the allocation of VAR. The department spokesperson is Stacey Lee Khojane.
This funding will enable the swift development of a comprehensive project plan, training programs for referees and officials, technology selection, stadium assessments, and the establishment of a VAR training center. A portion of the budget will be dedicated to providing reliable connectivity at relevant stadiums, ensuring seamless integration of the VAR system, while also enhancing overall stadium safety.
Onto this now. This year's Chan tournament left behind a legacy that stretches far beyond the 90 minutes of action on the pitch in Kenya. It also left a legacy of modernized stadiums, inspired fans, emerging local stars, and renewed confidence in Kenyan football. The benefits of Chan 2024 went well beyond the stadium gates. Hotels, restaurants, transport services, as well as local businesses thrived as fans as well as tourists poured into the different cities. The tournament also created both temporary as well as permanent jobs, boosted tourism, and also enhanced Kenya's visibility on the continental stage. For the government as well as the Football Kenya Federation, the lesson was quite clear. Investing in football pays off not only in goals and wins, but if economic activity as well as social cohesion is there. Further afield now, 3 parliamentarians are calling for an investigation into the case of a group of former Premier League players who say they were victims of financial abuse. Danny Murphy, Brian Dean, as well as Rod Wallace are part of a V11 campaign group which comprises of 11 footballers who invested with Kingsbridge Asset Management in the 1990s as well as the early 2000s. The players lost tens of millions of US dollars and some now owe millions to the taxman. Now, Lord Mann, Alex Sobel, as well as Sarah Ball, Ball said the case was the failure of regulation, accountability, as well as duty of care. They were speaking in response of the BBC documentary's Football Financial Shame, the story of the V11, which aired earlier on this week. So up to 200 footballers may have been affected, with some losing their homes and also others being made bankrupt. Onto this now. West Ham midfielder Lucas Paqueta is considering suing the Football Association after he was cleared of spot fixing. Now, sources close to the 28-year-old told BBC Sport that the player's lawyers are now currently considering all their options. The Brazilian was charged with by the FAA back in May of 2024 for allegedly getting booked deliberately for the improper purpose of affecting the betting market. Paqueta was cleared of 4 counts of the supposed spot fixing by an independent commission in July of 2025. The FA's investigation into Paqueta began in August of 2023, 9 months before the Brazilian was eventually charged. The announcement of the investigation also led to the collapse of the Brazilian's $100 million move to Manchester City. And finally, a record prize money of $13.88 million has been announced for the Women's Cricket World Cup, which will be held in both India as well as Sri Lanka from the 30th of September until the 2nd of November. The increase sees a monumental 297% rise from $3.5 million at the last edition held in New Zealand back in 2022. Now, a total prize pot surpasses that of the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup from 2 years ago in India, which also had a total prize money of $10 million. The winners of the 13th edition will receive a whopping $4.48 million, a staggering 239% increase from the $1.32 million awarded to Australia when they won their 7th title. That was about 3 years ago. The winner's purse at the last Men's World Cup was $4 million. With that, it concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 4:42 Central African time. Still on your agenda this afternoon, we'll be meeting our C-suite executive. She's head of market expansion at Mukuru, which is one of the largest money transfer providers in Africa. Also, a look at the Altron FinTech Household Resilience Index. It shows a consistent decline in the per capita disposable income of South African households. We'll be looking at the dynamics that have informed these outcomes. Do engage with us on our various social media platforms on X, Instagram and YouTube. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. And if you have any stories that you'd like to share, you can send us your emails at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
What an exciting time of the week this is when we get to meet dynamic men and women who are trailblazers and really just making waves in their area of expertise. This afternoon, we're joined by the head of market expansion at Mukuru. You will know that it is one of the largest money transfer providers on the African continent. She is none other than Tendai Tidzirai. She joined Mukuru in 2021, where she led operational expansion into 5 new territories, managing product development, go-to-market strategy, as well as implementation. And before that, Tendai led companies such as Channel Dynamics, Incline, and Qatar Airways market expansion initiatives across the continent and beyond the Atlantic. She's passionate about financial inclusion and believes diversity in financial services unlocks shared value. And Tendai Tidzirai, head of market expansion at Mukuru, joins us live now. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, you really have.
Great to be here.
It's great. I mean, you're working with a great brand, but you have a history of working with great brands. And one thing that's a thread throughout that is that market expansion seems to be your area of expertise. One could call it your superpower, if you wish. But what does someone who is responsible for market expansion initiatives for a company actually do? What is your job description?
So it's a really interesting question and a very big answer, but let me try and keep it succinct. So market expansion is essentially growing markets, and there's a few elements that go into it. So if I use, for example, my role currently at Mukuru, market expansion spans across, for instance, looking at initially before we look at which territories we want to go to. So first of all, it's geographic expansion that you look at. So it's trying to deepen our reach, so expand our reach across the continent. So it's entering new territories, and that involves a lot of things. It goes from licensing, so that's compliance. It goes from go-to-market strategies, making sure that we are building customer-specific and customer-centric products and delivering those specific to the different customer types in each territory. So for me, market expansion is essentially ensuring that you're going into a market, you are launching it, you're expanding it with whatever product it is that you're offering, but most importantly, you are focusing on what the customer in that territory wants.
Now you have an 18-year career in data analytics, financial services, as well as fintech, amongst others. But why finance? Why finance now?
I think if I think about my journey, right, I'll take you back when I was at university, I think a lot of us at that time, you're either going to be an accountant, you're going to be a lawyer, or you're going to be a doctor. Careers were very specific. So at that time, I had no idea what I was going to do. I actually started my career in accounting, so finance for Qatar Airways. And from there, my career, I've been through data analytics, I've worked with financial services brands, but I think what's driven me most to remittances and fintech in particular is the customer. That's what's driven me to this. So it's the ultimate impact that we make to the customer and how quickly and innovatively you're able to do that as a fintech. So for me, I think that's what has led me to fintech ultimately and in Africa, because I have a massive passion for the continent and its people. And we do use the term financial inclusion a lot. But for me personally, what it means is it's ensuring that everyone has access to financial products, regardless of where they are, regardless of what they look like. So for me, that was my motivation, that was my drive, and that's why I've landed in fintech.
Now, were there any personal experiences, either growing up or earlier on in your career, that fed this passion for, financial inclusivity, making sure that communities that don't have access actually end up being active participants, specifically in the financial systems?
I think over 18 years for me. I am from Zimbabwe, so I'm from Zimbabwe. So remittances is key to me, right? I'm a Zimbabwean, originally born, that lives in South Africa. I have family members across the globe. So for me, remittances and financial inclusion is a way of life, right? How we move money across and how we are able to cater and assist our families that are back home. So I can give you an example. For instance, money will move from the UK to me from my sister for my son's birthday. Money will move from me to my mother in Zimbabwe for either an electricity payment, a DSTV payment, or actually just paying for groceries and assistance. So for me, just that experience of having to leave my home country and explore other opportunities, that then led this to be a need for me. So it's a personal experience for me. And because it's a personal experience, I then am able to actually drive it with passion and with personal experience.
And you're also able to really see how it enhances the quality of life of the people that you're serving. And I'm sure that's a huge satisfaction for you.
Absolutely. So I think the fact that I can ultimately see that there is impact. So I think for me, that's what's key. The fact that there will be impact in someone's life, the fact that there will be electricity paid, there will be DSTV paid for, there will be school fees paid for, that makes a difference. That those funds landing instantly, so the speed of it, them landing securely, those are the important things, because once you don't take care of that, then we're not achieving the goal, which is ensuring that people are financially included, people have access to the economy.
So let's end up with Mukuru and your current and future footprint. Where to from here, and where are you now?
So I think if I'm looking at where I'm at Mukuru now, my personal goal is to ensure serving the African continent, continue innovating, ensuring that we continue to give access to financial products and financial services. So that's my personal goal. And that leads also into our goal as Mukuru. Our goal as Mukuru is we are a remittance-led organization. So we did start off with remittances, so offering remittances. That's where our customers met us, essentially. So we met our customers when they need to send money. What we're doing now at Mukuru is to continue deepening that offering. So we now offer store of value. So we offer wallets where customers can receive funds into those wallets, store into the wallet, and then from storing, they can also spend in the wallet. So funds have landed in your wallet, either as a remittance, or as a salary payment locally in South Africa into your card. And once that is done, you're able then to spend with the different value-added services that we have given access to our consumers.
Tendai Tezerai, awesome chatting to you and wishing you all the best as you continue connecting communities around the African continent. We thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. That's Tendai Tezerai. She's head of market expansion at Mukuru. She takes us to exactly 9 minutes to 5 p.m.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwena@sabc.co.za. That's MOKOENATA @SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:52 Central African Time. Just a recap of some of the top stories that we brought to you today. We did focus on the G20 and conversations that are taking place to ensure that all communities' voices are actually represented in the final G20 outcomes. We had a conversation with Supra Mamapelo, who's head of the portfolio committee there on international relations, also focusing on the G20. And we bring that feature to you every single Thursday. It is simulcast between ourselves as Channel Africa and SAFM. A large number of the engagement groups that are under the spotlight include the Y20, the C20, the W20, the T20 and the B20. One thing that actually came out of that conversation with Supra Mamapelo is a recommendation that was put forward by the Y20. Young people saying that the conversations and the strategies that they're discussing now should not be limited to only when the G20 is actually in session, but indeed that a global network of young people and their voices and their issues are established, and these need to persist throughout the course of the year. That is one way of ensuring progress and sustainability. Very interesting conversation, and looking forward to what we have in store for you next week for our next G20. But for now, a look at the Altron FinTech Household Resilience Index and what it has outlined as far as accessibility, affordability and disposable income for South African households.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Now, for the first quarter of 2025, the Altron FinTech Household Resilience Index has shown a year-on-year improvement. However, an average South African household does still face financial vulnerability as high interest rates continue. Economist Dr. Roelof Botha, who compiles the index on behalf of Altron FinTech, says the restrictive monetary policy of the MPC has been the main reason for the consistent decline in the per capita disposable income of South African households. He joins us now. A very good afternoon to you, Doctor. Good to have you with us on African Business.
Thank you for having me.
So you've described the South African Reserve Bank's monetary policy as restrictive, and you've also said it's the main reason for the consistent decline in the per capita disposable income of South Africans. Can you elaborate on this for us?
Yes, it's quite simple. I think most of my undergraduate students understand it a lot better, of course, than the MPC members, unfortunately for South Africans. Because when the inflation rate started increasing shortly after COVID, I just want to take the listeners back to what the prime overdraft rate was at that stage. It was 7%. It had been reduced from 10 to 7%. It's important to just, remind oneself of these numbers. So we had a 7% inflation rate, and then the economy grew at almost 3% per annum, annualized, for several quarters. But in that period, sea freight charges, and 80% of all tradable goods, 80%, get shipped by the ocean, not by aeroplanes. And those costs increased by 700%. I'm going to repeat that, 700%. That's 7 times what they were. And the oil price increased more or less simultaneously by 400%. That's 4 times, inter alia, because of the Russian military dictatorship's military invasion of a free enterprise democracy, the Ukraine. These 2 price shocks had never occurred before in the modern history of the world. And it caused inflation to spike in virtually every country in the world. So what do you do about this? How should a central bank react to this? They should realize that this is a supply-side shock. It's going to feed into the system. It's going to wind its way out of the system as these prices normalize, which they've done, which was predictable. So they all came right down again to where they should be. And that's the reason why inflation has declined again globally and in South Africa. But in the meantime, central banks, I don't know why, maybe they wanted to get some attention, they just kept on raising interest rates. And our central bank followed the cue of the United States Federal Reserve. But the US has a 4% unemployment rate. We have a 40% unemployment rate. So it was not the right decision, and that's putting it very mildly. And I can guarantee you that the majority of economists in South Africa would agree with what I've just said. It was never necessary for the South African Reserve Bank to raise interest rates at all. Because once they've done that, if you look at the better bond index of home loan applications, it came crashing down. If you look at household disposable income, it came crashing down. It was chaos, and it wasn't necessary. It's really a pity. We have had interest rate relief, and that's why the Altron FinTech Index looks a little bit better, but we need a lot more to get this economy growing and to do what we should do, most importantly, and that is to create jobs in this country.
Dr. Roelof Botha, we're going to have to leave it at that, but I think a very important perspective as well that has been put on the table. How do we, turn it around, the high unemployment rate, the interest rates as well, issues of affordability for South Africans. It sounds like literally just turning the entire, paradigm on its head. And benchmarking ourselves with similar economies or countries that are facing similar problems. Dr. Roelof Botha, we thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's the economist, Dr. Roelof Botha, who actually compiled the FinTech Household Resilience Index. Takes us to 1 minute to 5 p.m. Central African Time. On your agenda, bonjour, what's coming up on VuesdAfrique?
On va parler sur VuesdAfrique de la campagne électorale pour la présidentielle au Malawi, mais aussi du conflit en République démocratique du Congo et des discussions de Doha, mais aussi d'un nouveau rapport de la CHITOC qui met en lumière des groupes criminels en Afrique de l'Ouest. Merci Tammy.
Merci beaucoup. That's Joelle coming up with Afrique du Sud. Not Afrique du Sud. With VuesdAfrique. We are Afrique du Sud. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you once again this Thursday afternoon from Africa in Business. You have yourself a splendid day further as we hand over now to VuesdAfrique.
Un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joelle Muteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
La campagne électorale pour la présidentielle du 16 septembre bat son plein au Malawi où deux ex-présidents Peter Mutharika et Joyce Banda vont défier le président sortant Lazarus Chakwera. Conflit à l'est de la République démocratique du Congo, les discussions de Doha butent sur la question de la libération ou pas des prisonniers dans un contexte d'accusation mutuelle. Et enfin, pour les grands titres de ce soir, un nouveau rapport de la CHITOC publié mardi met en lumière l'enracinement croissant des groupes criminels des Balkans occidentaux dans la chaîne logistique de la cocaïne en Afrique de l'Ouest. Bonjour à tous et merci de vous connecter sur notre site internet www.channelafrica.co.za pour suivre Vue d'Afrique, le magazine d'actualité.
Les lenteurs dans la mise en œuvre de certains volets de l'accord et réaffirmer leur engagement à garantir son exécution complète et dans le délai pour renforcer la stabilité et la prospérité dans l'ensemble de la région des Grands Lacs. Les discussions ont porté notamment sur les violences récentes dans l'est de la RDC et des mesures concrètes à prendre pour assurer le respect des dispositions de l'accord. Le comité a salué la fusion des secrétariats techniques de la communauté de l'Afrique de l'Est, de la SADC et de l'Union africaine en un secrétariat conjoint indépendant, soulignant le rôle central de l'Union africaine dans le suivi de l'accord. Au Kenya, la police a confirmé ce mercredi 4 septembre que 11 suspects ont été placés en détention après l'exhumation des 34 corps et la découverte de 102 restes humains dans des fosses peu profondes du comté de Kilifi au sud de Nairobi, la capitale.
Le chef de la police, Douglas Kanja, a précisé que 4 des suspects sont considérés comme les principaux visés par l'enquête sur ces décès. Il a ajouté que les premières constatations laissent penser que de nombreuses victimes n'étaient pas originaires de la région, compliquant ainsi les procédures d'identification. La police qui évoque un retour des tueries liées à des cultes religieux a exhumé jusqu'à présent 32 corps et 2 autres retrouvés dans la zone, ce qui porte les rassemblements religieux suspects ne fait qu'encourager les prédicateurs extrémistes et accroît le risque de nouvelles tragédies de masse.
La CEDEAO, la Communauté économique des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, confirme avoir envoyé une mission technique en Sierra Leone pour évaluer les différents frontaliers avec la Guinée autour du village de Yenga. D'après un responsable de l'organisation sous-régionale, il s'agit d'une mission d'évaluation composée des techniciens chargés de comprendre la situation et de rendre compte. Leur rapport doit être remis au chef d'État de la Guinée et de la Sierra Leone, et ce, conformément à une recommandation du dernier sommet de la CEDEAO. Mais auparavant, une rencontre